Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to be talking about how to improve your meeting book rate for your cold email, specifically if you're a marketing agency or service-based business. And everything that I'm going to be sharing in today's video has come from me working with over 55 agencies, also from growing my own agency in e-commerce niche to actually over multiple six figures. And by everything that I'm showing you today, we're going to make sure that your meeting book rate is as good as it can be. Now, if you don't know who I am already, my name is Reece. As I said, I grew my own agency to multiple six figures. I also coach and help agency owners do the same thing. So let's get into the video. So pretty much when it comes to improving your cold email book rate, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. When it comes to the meeting book rate itself, actually, firstly, I'll explain what that means for people that might be a little bit confused. By email book rate, what I mean is the percentage of people that receive your email versus the people that actually book in a meeting. All right. So the meeting book rate, if you send 100 emails and you have 10 people book in a meeting, then you have a 10% meeting book rate. If you do 100 outreaches and you have one person book in, you have a 1% meeting book rate. That's what we're going off today. Okay. Now, when it comes to improving your meeting book rate, I mean, firstly, if it's above anywhere from between 1 to 3%, if it's at that level or above, leave it alone. All right, it's performing really well. 1 to 3% is kind of the benchmark that we want to go for as the KPI. So it's performing around that level or above. Leave it alone. It's doing fine. Don't change anything. A lot of the time, people be like, "Hey, my meeting book rate is 2%." But my open rate is like 50%. I need to increase it. I'm like, no, don't touch it. It's working, all right? It's booking meetings at the level that it should be. It's not actually higher. I would say like at a minimum, you really want to be going for that 1% meeting book rate. If you're getting a 2 or a 3%, you're probably world-class and you probably don't need to watch this video because that's really good, right? Now, of course, you can still make improvements, but just don't stop what you're doing. Make sure that you continue doing exactly what you're doing and don't change anything because that is working really, really well. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you're below a 1% meeting book rate, which means that your emails aren't performing at the level that they should be. They need to be improved. There's a few ways that we want to go about this. In terms of metrics that we want to look at, we've got the meeting book rate, which is the most important. Underneath that, we have the response rate, which is like the second. Then we have the open rate. And if we reverse that, it's everything that is going on from the prospect side. They've got to open, they've got to read and respond, and then they've got to actually book in the meeting. So what we're doing when we're actually the marketers, we're actually doing the cold email, we're looking at it the reverse way around. We're looking at the most important KPI, which is meeting book rate. That's why I say if that's performing well, leave it alone, right? And ultimately, you want to get your meeting book rate to around 1 to 3%. If you can get it there, you're good. You're good enough to scale and keep going. If you are at that level and you want to make improvements, all you got to do is duplicate your campaign and continue sending the original because it's working really, really well. Again, don't change anything there, but duplicate it and you can make tests on a second campaign and then you can see if you can get that meeting book rate even higher. Generally, if people have a good response rate and a low meeting book rate, because again, we're going to go through this meeting book rate, response rate, open rate, and we're going to talk about how to improve your response rate and your open rate and your meeting book rate to overall get more meetings booked in, right? So if you have a bad meeting book rate, if your meeting book rate is below 1%, generally what that means is that you're not following up with people enough. That's the number one thing. Because if you've got a decent open rate, and I'll tell you what to aim for in a moment, but if you've got a decent open rate, and the issue is that a response rate, and people are just not booking, then we know that you're probably not following up with them as relentlessly as you should be. Now, silence is not a response. If somebody doesn't respond to you, you want to continue following up with them. You should have a several-step campaign already. Don't assume that you can only send one email to each person, that you're going to get a response. It's not how this works. You've got to make sure that you're following up with people sufficiently. So what that means when it comes to cold email is we generally launch around 5 or 6 cold email campaign. So that means there's like 5 or 6 emails within that one campaign. And the person has only completed its cycle once it's gone around all of those people. Now, the people that don't respond, we just add them into another campaign about a month or 2 later. So we just kind of keep cycling these people. We'll go through our entire list, and when we reach the end, we just cycle it again. So when I say 1 to 2 months, it depends on how big your list is and how much you're sending. But ultimately, you want to get back to these people later, okay? Now, If somebody has responded to your campaign, in that scenario, that's where you want to be more ruthless with your follow-ups. If somebody has said, I'm interested, give me more information, you send over a response to that, and then they don't respond, follow up and keep following up again and again and again and again. There's different cadences and things that we can talk about there, but the safest way to do it is just follow up with somebody today, follow up with somebody tomorrow, wait 2 days, follow up with them again, and then switch it to a weekly follow-up. So you just follow up them once a week, once a week, once a week. And then after a month, if you continue doing that, you can do bi-weekly and just every 2 weeks or so, or every month, you can just go ahead and shoot them a follow-up. The important thing is don't stop unless they tell you to stop. If they tell you, hey, stop, I'm not interested, I'm never going to be interested, I don't like you, stop doing this, then sure, go ahead, respect their wishes, stop following up with them. But if somebody has shown you interest, this is the biggest thing. If people respond and they're showing you interest, you must follow up with them continuously, forever, until they ask you to stop or they become a client because you're so persistent, okay? So relentless follow-ups, super important. This is specifically if people are interested and they're not booking. That's really what you want to do, is make sure you're following up with them. The second thing is just having a poor appointment setting process. What I mean by that is, remember, at this stage, we're considering that the person has already responded and they're just not booking, right? So you've got good responses, but people aren't booking. So at this place, you want to look at how you're actually trying to book in that call in the first place. So for example, how are you responding to their questions? If somebody asks about the price, are you just straight up giving them the price? Or are you positioning the call as the way that you will answer their question, right? If people ask for more information, are you just giving them like a 20-page PDF? Or are you positioning the call as the way that they can get the information that they're after and get the answers to their questions, right? That's what it ultimately comes down to. Secondary to that, a mistake that I see a lot of people making is they just throw their Calendly out in the first, like as soon as they respond. Like somebody says, I'm interested, send more information. They're like, sure, book in a call, and then they just send the link. That's not a very good appointment setting approach. And the reason for that is because it comes across very ingenuine and very insincere. Naturally, if somebody has responded, they are like the warmest lead that you have, one of the warmest leads that you have in your pipeline. Now, of course, post sales call, they're even warmer generally, and people that have booked, they're super warm as well. But if somebody has shown interest and said, hey, I'm interested in this thing, that's why you want to be relentless with your follow-ups, but you also want to treat them like a human being and actually try and have a genuine conversation with them. So if somebody responds, don't just copy and paste the message across to them. You can use the same format each time, but if you copy and paste it, then that's really broad. It's vague, it's not direct to the person. So if somebody responds and asks you for the pricing, respond directly to the way that they ask the question, because there's so many ways that people can ask what the pricing is, right? So we want to make sure that we're actually responding directly to their individual response and getting straight to them, being genuine, being real, and being human with them. And by doing those two things, you're going to improve your appointment setting approach, which naturally is going to improve your meeting book rate. Now, next is response rate. If you're getting a poor response rate, and a poor response rate really is anywhere below 2 to 5% plus, right? 2 to 5% plus is really good. It depends on your niche. Some of you are hearing that and thinking, what? That's crazy low. And that might be the case. I mean, we've got campaigns where we're getting 15, 20% plus response rate. But ultimately, what you want to look at here is, again, if the meeting book rate is low, that's when you want to come down to the next thing that's on the list. So meeting book rate, if it's low, you want to think about the things that we've spoken about already. If the meeting book rate is low and you've already looked at those things and things are performing well, then you want to come a step before that, which is the response rate. As I said, 2 to 5% at a minimum is decent. In some niches, you're going to get 15, 20%. We're seeing around a 15 to 16% right now. And it is possible, especially if you've got good data, which is the first thing when it comes to improving your response rate. Making sure that you have good data. If you have bad data and you're emailing people that don't want the email or don't apply for your offer, or just naturally bad data, it doesn't make sense. And data can be split into two things. Audience itself, which is what I was just talking about just now. And then data in terms of like deliverability. And what I mean by that is, are you actually emailing email addresses that work in the first place? Because that's going to come later as well when we come back into open rate. But naturally, if you're reaching out to the wrong audience, meaning people that won't be interested, and if you're reaching out to email addresses that don't work, then obviously nobody's seeing the email to be able to respond in the first place. And those are the two things that you want to look at first: data and audience first look at the data, make sure that your bounce rate is low, make sure that you're getting, you're delivering your emails, making sure that your audience is correct is the second thing, making sure the audience is spot on. And then third, that's when you can look at the email campaign itself. Look at the angles, which is like how you're communicating the offer and how you're presenting that across. And then also look at the call to action. But again, you want to go in that order. Look at the data first, then look at the audience, then look at your offer, then look at your call to action. And if you do it in that order, you're going in the order that's most natural to people when they're getting it. Make sure that it's being delivered, make sure that it's being delivered to the right person, making sure that they're reading an offer that actually is going to, get something within them, like trigger some mystery, trigger some intrigue and interest. And then the call to action to make it easy for people to respond. If your response rate's low and you've got like a really bad call to action, then people aren't going to be responding anyway. Quick side note, when it comes to call to actions, make your call to action like soft. And what I mean by soft is something like, is this something that you'd be interested in? Or would this be worth a chat? Is really soft, as opposed to something that's really hard, where it's like, would you like a 15-minute call this week to discuss? Like, don't go with a hard option, go for something softer. Again, we're trying to be genuine at this page. We're just trying to get a response. Once we get the response with the appointment setting skills that we've spoken about in this video, that's when you're going to go ahead and get a meeting book rate and get meetings booked in, okay? So that's the response rate. Again, it should be anywhere 2 to 5% plus. And if it's not performing well, it's because either of your data, your audience, your angles, which is your offer, or how you're communicating your offer, and your call to actions, okay? Now, lastly, we want to look at open rate. Now, an open rate at a minimum should be around 60%. If your open rate is really low, and I mean like around 20% less, then you need to look at deliverability first, because that means that you're probably either on a blacklist and your emails just aren't even really sending in the first place, or number two, your data is just horrible. Like, you're using really bad data. And by bad data, what I mean is email addresses that don't work in the first place. Okay, so you want to look at that first. First thing, with a poor open rate, look at deliverability. If your open rate is around 40, 50%, so it's not really low, but it is below the 60% that we're aiming for, then you want to look at, again, the data and the audience. I already just spoke a bunch about that before. I'm not going to talk about it too much right now. Data, again, is just making sure that you're emailing to the right email addresses that work. And then also the audience that is actually going to be interested in what your email is containing, okay? If you are approaching like really large businesses and you're reaching out to the CEO, it might be better to actually reach out to the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, because they're going to be like more readily able to actually see the email, respond to it, and they're probably going to be actually more interested. If it's a niche, or if you're targeting businesses that are that big, where it's going to be better to contact the CMO instead of the CEO, then make sure that you're doing that. Make sure that you're reaching the right audience in the first place, okay? If your deliverability is good, meaning you're not on blacklist, your email accounts are warmed up and everything, your data is good, meaning that you're, sending it to email addresses that actually work. Your audience is good, meaning you're sending it to the right people that would be interested. Then that's where you want to start looking at the subject line. A lot of people jump, hey, subject line if your open rate's low, but it's not the case, because we've been able to achieve a 97% open rate at scale, which is ridiculous. I know that's unheard of. I know it's crazy. We were able to achieve it at scale with a simple subject line that you all know. It's the first one that came to your head. Quick question. 97% open rate with quick question. That should prove that the subject line itself is irrelevant, because it's such a simple, overused subject line, but it worked really well. And the reason that it works so well is because of the data, because of the audience, and because we're sending it to the right people. That's why you want to focus on that first, okay? The subject line isn't very important. If somebody sees an email, look, if the subject line says, buy our stuff, or we've got a deal for you, or we can help you with your marketing, then that's not good, okay? Say it in the nicest way possible. It's not a very good subject line. So again, subject lines, make them softer. A quick question for name. You can even just say their business name. There's just loads of different things that you can try there. But again, the subject line is the last thing that you should be trying, as long as you're using a subject line right now, which isn't really bad. You'll know it's bad if you're being really super direct. That's how you'll know whether or not your subject line is good or not, okay? If you're saying, buy our stuff, here's a deal, different situations I just gave you before, those examples. If you're doing that type of thing, then it's probably a subject line issue. But again, start with what I said. Check the deliverability, check the data, check the audience. If all of that is good, then look at your subject line. As a little bonus here with subject line, also have a look at what your first line is in your email, because you know how when people on their phone or on their laptop or whatever it is, they're looking at their Gmail, they will see the preview text of the email, which is going to be like, hey name, and then the first line. They're going to see that before they see anything else. And if that looks off, they might not even open the email. Like if they're super busy, they might not even open the email if there's something weird that's there. I get it all the time. People message me, subject line looks okay, but then the first line in the preview text is something super salesy. Hey, do you want us to trim and create reels for you? Like something like that, like right off the bat. It's like, dude, I don't even know who you are. Like at least, have a little chat with me before you're trying to make some type of offer like this. It's very off-putting, and it's not genuine, and it's ingenuine. It's very insincere, as I mentioned before. So to summarize the video, because we've been through quite a bit, but to summarize everything, in order to have a good meeting book rate, you need to have a good offer. First thing, have a good offer and a good call to action. An offer that people want, a call to action that makes it easy for them to respond. Have a good audience. This means have a good data, meaning the email addresses are working. Run them through a email verifier or cleaner, such as Never Bounce or things like that. Make sure that you're emailing and contacting the right people that would be interested in that specific offer. And by the right person, I don't just mean that niche specifically, but I mean also the right person within that business, especially if you're working with large businesses. You want to make sure that you're being really natural and genuine in terms of the email itself, in terms of the appointment booking, the subject line. Just be real, natural, and genuine with people. The best way to approach an email is just think to yourself, okay, if I were writing this email for a friend, what would I write here? Okay. Now, obviously, I say to a friend, you got to also understand that this is cold. People don't know who you are. And especially in a cold email, you do need to briefly explain, a little bit of who you are, why you're contacting them, or what it is that you do. So I will save it for another video where I actually go through what our scripts look like and how we want that. If you want that, just comment down below and I can go ahead, I can create a video going over actually how we write cold email campaigns. Right now, we've got around a 5% meeting book rate. It's a brand new campaign. I'm not going to sit here and say that is performing at scale, because it's not. We've sent around 400 emails and we've got around 5% meeting book rate, which is really good. Really, really happy with that. It's definitely scalable. But if you follow everything that I've spoken about today, you are going to be on your step to getting a good meeting book rate. Now, if you're an agency owner yourself and you're looking to actually get a more consistent and predictable flow of meetings for your agency, click the link down below. It will tell you a little bit more about who I am, what we do, the results we've achieved, how we help agency owners. And if you're interested, go ahead, you can book in a call that will be with me directly. If not, but you enjoyed this video, just hit the subscribe button, comment down below if you have any questions or any comments or anything that you want me to cover. If you want me to go over our scripts, I can do that as well in another video. Just let me know below, I can get right into that. Aside from that, hope you found today's video valuable, and I'll see you again in the next one.